What's up everybody, welcome back. So in this video I want to step away from the Steam stuff for a while and go back to a little bit of gameplay stuff. So we're not 100% done with Steam yet. I have a few things I want to take a look at, but I just want to switch things up a little bit. So for this video we're going to take a look at dropping a weapon if we replace it in our inventory. So currently if I pick up a weapon and my inventory would be full, then I can drop the weapon back on the ground for other players to pick up. So currently if I replace my AA-20 for example, it will drop it and then spawn a new pickup over there. So that's what we're going to do in this episode. If you like the series, please consider leaving a like. If you want to get the project for yourself, you can become a member of the YouTube channel or become a Patreon, and then you will get access to premium channels in the Discord and also a download for this premium project. There's also a bunch of free project files that everybody can download if they're not a member as well. So make sure to check out the Discord whenever you like. So let's start today's video. So first of all, I have two small fixes that I want to take a look at before we start working on the actual dropping weapon part. The first thing I want to take a look at is in the gameplay loot folder for the pickup weapon over here. So let's open our pickup weapon. If we go inside of the pickup function at the beginning over here, we check if we are replacing a weapon or not. If that's true, then we're following this branch, but we're not actually setting the local is new item boolean to true. And we are replacing a weapon in our inventory, so that's always a new weapon that's not in the inventory yet. So we want to make sure that we actually set the local bool to true over here as well. Otherwise we can end up with problems later in the function where we do the ammo checks. So over here it will return as ammo full, and it will not pick up the actual pickup from the level. So it will add it to the player, but the pickup remains on the ground in the level and it will say ammo full. So to fix that bug, make sure at the beginning over here set local is new weapon to true, and that will take care of the bug when picking up a weapon. And the second thing I want to take a look at is inside of the hero base character. If we go to the server process hit function, so we added the maximum distance for the weapons, and currently if we fire in the distance and we have a blocking hit outside of our weapon range, we do not have any tracers for the weapon. So we do have a tracer if we fire up in the air and there's no blocking hit. So we want to make sure that if this one over here is true, where the weapon maximum range is greater than the distance, but we actually hit something, we simply want to say is valid hit is true. It's a really simple fix, so all this does is make sure that the hit result actually gets added to the array of hit results, and we are already taking care of the damage part over here, so we can simply switch this back to true, and that will take care of the tracer issue. So those are the two small fixes, and then there is one other thing I did related to the weapon drops, and that's go into the weapon folder, and for all of my skeletal meshes for the weapons, I created a static mesh. And that's mainly for sort of optimization reasons. So if we have a bunch of pickups in the level, those are all using skeletal meshes, while they don't really need to use skeletal meshes. And also if we drop the weapon and we're dealing with the collision part, it's a little bit easier and less heavy to simply use a static mesh. So what I did is simply open the skeletal mesh and then click the make static mesh button over here and make sure I added it to the correct folder. So for the auto pistol you could say static mesh pistol new, and this will automatically add the new static mesh over here. Then you need to make sure you open the actual mesh and go to the collision and add a box simplified collision. So this is really important for the actual dropping weapon stuff. If there's no collision for the static mesh, it will not work. So created a static mesh, added collision, and then for completion's sake, you can go into the loot folder and open the pickup weapon info table. So currently we have the pickup mesh set to a skeletal mesh for the weapons, and we could simply replace it with the static mesh that we just made, just for optimization reasons, as I mentioned before. So that's something you can do on your own. Simply create a static mesh for every weapon, add collision, and you can replace it inside of the data table over here as well to make sure that you're actually using the new static mesh and not the skeletal. Like so. So do that for all of the weapons, and once that's done, you can get back to the video. So I have created a static mesh for each of my weapons, and inside of the data table I have replaced all of the skeletal meshes with the new static meshes. Now one extra thing you want to do is inside of the data table also add a pickup for the normal pistol. So by default we only have the auto pistol in here. We start the level with the pistol, so we don't have a pickup for the pistol. At least I didn't have one yet. So make sure that we also have one for the normal pistol. So I'm going to duplicate the auto pistol and simply rename some stuff in here. So let's call this pistol. Let's get rid of auto and make sure we grab the correct pistol mesh over here. So then remove auto over here, and the row name to add is simply going to be pistol. So this should be good to go, and we also have a default pistol pickup, so we can spawn that one if we drop the pistol. Now we want to create a new actor that we are actually going to drop. So let's right click inside of the loot folder. I'm going to create a new blueprint class and simply select an actor. So this is going to be my BP throwable weapon. So if you also follow the inventory series, you have a BP throwable item, which is really similar to this one. So you could pretty easily merge those into one blueprint and simply use that single blueprint. Not everyone might be following the inventory series, so I'm simply going to pretend that doesn't exist for this series. So let's open up the new throwable item, and the first thing we want to do in here is go to the class defaults, and we're going to make sure that we enable replication. So we want to set replicates over here to true, and we're also going to enable replicate movement over here. Then we want to add a static mesh component. So this is going to be the weapon mesh. And we need this component to be the actual root, since we're going to make this a physics actor. So simply drop it on top of the root and make sure that the mesh is the actual first component. And it's also going to be the only component in my case. But if you add multiple components for some reason, make sure the mesh is the first component in the list over here. So with the component selected, we want to make sure that we set up the collision and the replication. So first of all, on the right side, we're going to enable component replicates. And we also need to set up the collision over here. So we can set it to a preset for the physics actor over here. And we also want to make sure that we enable CCD. So if we expand the advanced section, we're going to enable continuous collision detection. So click this one, and then we should be good to go. So those are all of the default settings. That's good. So now we want to set up the construction script. So let's go to the construction script first. And we're going to make this replicated and handled by the server. So the first thing we're going to do is grab a branch and check if we are the server or not. So there's one little side note about the construction script. It's not always safe to handle replicated stuff in here. This is a pickup that we're spawning during the game. So the game is already running and all clients should be in the level and already playing when this actor is spawned. So for that reason, we can use the construction script and it should work. If we place this in the actual level, the construction script might fire before the client is connected to the actual level and spawned in. And it might not replicate properly for all clients. So it's not always safe to use a construction script depending on what you're doing with the actor. In this case, it should work. So we want to use a few variables as well. First of all, let me disable inherited variables so it's a little bit cleaner over here. We're going to add a new variable to the throwable weapon, and that's going to be the weapon name. So this needs to be a name variable, and we're going to make it instance editable and exposed on spawn. And we also want to add the ammo clip and the ammo stock, so we can add the correct amount of ammo to the weapon to make sure that the player that picks it get the correct amount of ammo. So we're also going to enable instance editable and exposed on spawn for the ammo clip and for the ammo stock. And we need one last variable, and that's the pickup row name. And I'll get back to this in a second. So we want to change this into a name, and then we don't need to make this instance editable. This can be a normal variable. So we're going to drop a weapon from the player, and if we do that, we are using the weapon row name from the actual weapon info table. So if we go over here, we are using these weapon row names over here. And in the end, we want to spawn a pickup, and the pickup comes from the pickup info table over here. So these names could match up, as I have mentioned in the series previously, but they can also be different. For example, so if we have the rifle, we have the actual name in the weapon info table as AR. So we need to make sure that we grab the correct name from the list to know which weapon we need to spawn. The easiest thing to do would be simply have these names match up. So in this case, if this was my project, I would simply rename AR over here to rifle to make sure that the names in both of the data tables simply match up and there's no need to look them up. If you actually already have this setup and you added tons of weapons and you don't want to go in and replace stuff, then you can do it the way I'm going to do it in here. And that's by getting a table column as a string. So if we right click and do get table column as string, then we can simply get an entire column. So a vertical column from our data table. So we're going to get this column at the end with the weapon row names to add. We're going to search for the correct row name in here. And then the index in this array is the same index as the name of the weapon in all of the weapon row names. So that's the way we're going to do it. So we're going to get a table column as string. We want to get it from our weapon pickup info table. The property name is the row name to add. So that's over here. This is the property name, the name of the actual column. And then we get a string array with all of the strings. So from here we can drag off and we can find an item. We want to find our weapon name, so we can plug that in from the variables and it will convert it to a string. So if we find the correct index in this array, then we can use all of the row names from the table and use that same index to determine which weapon it is. So we can drag off here again and get the table row names. And we want to get it from our pickup weapon info table again. And then we can drag off this array and get a copy from the same index. And that will be the correct weapon pickup that we need to spawn. So we can grab our pickup row name and save that in here. So that's how that can work. So it's not the smoothest way, as I mentioned. Simply make sure the names match up and you don't need to do all of this stuff. You can simply use one row name and plug that in and then you should be good. Okay, so we have this set up. Now we can get a table row. So let's get a table row. And again, we're gonna get it from our pickup row table. So pickup weapon info table. And in this case, we're going to use the pickup row name that we just found. We're going to break the out row. And we need the pickup mesh, and we also want to set the pickup mesh scale. So for the pickup mesh, this is a soft object reference, so we need to make sure that we can load it inside of the event graph. So we're going to go to the event graph, create a new custom event, and call this load static mesh. So over here, we're going to do an async load asset. Async asset. Okay, let's go in here. Let's see, we're gonna drag off here and do async load. We can't do that in here. Oh, freaking really. So this is a static mesh soft object reference. So we can add an input in here. Call this our mesh, and then this is going to be a static mesh. So we're gonna select the static mesh and then the soft object reference. So we can drag off here and do async load asset. There we go. So if this is completed, we want to grab our weapon mesh. We need to cast the object to a static mesh object. So cast to static mesh. We can convert it to a pure cast and then make sure we set the static mesh of our component. Set static mesh. Plug it in over here. Hook this up to the completed pin. And with this event set up, we can go back into the construction script and actually call our load static mesh. Plug in the pickup mesh over here, and then we want to set the scale for the pickup mesh. So we can drag it in here again and then set the relative scale 3D. Plug it in again and simply grab the pickup mesh scale and plug in the float. It will convert it to a vector, and that should work. So that's the construction script taken care of. And now we want to go to the event graph and actually continue setting this up. So we're going to get rid of the event begin play and tick stuff. We're not going to use that. We're going to create our own custom event, and let's call this one throw weapon. So we want to call this event right after we set the static mesh over here. So we can drag off here and call our throw weapon event. So as soon as the mesh is loaded and spawned in, we're going to throw it. The first thing we're going to do over here is grab the weapon mesh and we're going to set simulate physics. So set simulate physics, make sure we enable it over here. Then we're going to give it an impulse. So we're going to drag off the weapon mesh again, add impulse. And this will make it fly off in the distance. So we can simply grab the forward vector of the actor. So let's get forward vector. And then this one, get actor forward vector. And then we're going to multiply this. So let's multiply, convert the lower pin to an integer, and then I'm going to multiply it with something like 250. You can play around with this value. It's how hard you're going to throw the weapon away. And then we want to enable velocity change over here, and that should make it work. So we're actually giving the weapon an impulse. Then we want to check the current velocity. So we're going to right click in an empty spot and get the velocity of this actor. From the velocity, drag off and get the vector length. And we're simply going to check the length of the vector. So we're going to do is greater than or equal to. And I'm not going to say 0, so I'm not going to wait till it's actually fully at a stop. I'm going to use something like 5 or 10. So if it's really slowly moving across the ground, then it will stop and spawn a pickup over there. So we can grab a branch over here and use this as our condition. So as long as we're moving, we're simply going to wait. So we're going to grab a delay, and we might want to add that before the branch. So we're going to do it like this. First, we're going to wait for 0.2 seconds, and then we're going to check the current velocity. If the velocity is greater than or equal to 5, we're going to keep waiting. So we're going to go back to the delay, like so. And if the velocity is lower than 5, then we can actually spawn a pickup at the location of this actor. So first of all, we want to grab our weapon mesh and we want to disable physics. So we're going to set simulate physics back to false over here. Then we also want to change the collision profile. So drag off the weapon mesh again and say set collision profile name. Profile name over here. Plug it in and we simply want to set it to overlap all dynamic. So it's not blocking anything anymore. So overlap all dynamic. That should be good to go. And then we actually want to spawn the weapon pickup. So we can drag off here and do spawn actor from class. So we already have a weapon pickup that we can spawn. So we can simply look for weapon pickup. And this will give us a whole bunch of exposed variables that we need to enter. So first of all, we're going to grab the transform and we're going to use the transform of the throwable weapon. But we're only going to use the yaw and not the roll and the pitch. So we can right click in an empty spot and get the actor transform over here. And then we can split it. And we want to split the location a second time. So we can split the transform on the spawn node as well. Then we can simply hook up the location. We're going to split the rotation again and only hook up the yaw. And for the scale, we can simply leave it to 1. That's fine. We don't need to hook it up. Then for the weapon row name to add, that's going to be the weapon name from the variables. So we can plug that one in over here. So the save picked up weapon, you can simply enable or disable this depending on what you want the game to behave like. So if you enable it after the player picked it up, he will be able to select it from the loadout menu at the beginning in the lobby. And if you don't enable it, then this won't save to the player's loadout. For the clip and the stock, we can simply hook up our exposed variables like so. The pickup row name, we can use the pickup row name that we retrieved in the construction script, and that should be good to go. And then after we spawned the weapon pickup, we want to destroy the throwable weapon. So we're simply going to say destroy actor ourselves. Okay, so we can compile and save this one, and that should be good to go. So now we only need 2 small things inside of the hero base character, and this should work. So let's go to our hero base character. In the event graph, we want to add a new event to drop the weapon. So let's go to an empty spot on the event graph. So again, if you are following the inventory series, you have a component in here that says throw item direction. So this is simply an arrow component that we use to determine the location and the direction where we are throwing an item. So I'm going to use this component again for throwing the weapon. So if you don't follow the inventory series and you don't have this component, simply add an arrow component to the capsule component. And then you can move it into place, and this is the position and the direction from where the thrown weapon will spawn. So make sure you add a component like that, and it doesn't need any special settings like replication or things like that. You can simply add it and that's good to go. So then we can go into the event graph and we can create a new custom event. I'm going to call this drop weapon. And we actually need 3 inputs. So the first one is going to be the weapon name. So that's a name variable. And then we need the ammo clip and the ammo stock. So we're going to add 2 integers, ammo clip, turn this into an int, and add the ammo stock as well. Like so. And really all we need to do in this event is spawn an actor from class. So that's spawn actor. And we're gonna spawn our throwable weapon. So BP throwable weapon. And then we simply get the variables that we can hook up over here. So we can simply pass them on. And for the spawn transform, I'm gonna grab the throw item direction component and get the world transform, this one, and simply hook that one up over here. So that's good to go as well. And the last thing we need to do right now is go into the actual replace weapon function. So we have server replace weapon. And if we go to this event over here, so this is what's actually being called from the weapon wheel if we replace the weapon. Right before we call this pickup replace weapon, we want to call our drop weapon. So we want to make sure we do it before this call, otherwise the array with the names in the inventory has changed already. So what we can do over here is simply call drop weapon. Then hook this one back up to the pickup replace weapon. And we can simply hook up our inventory in here. So we're going to grab our weapon inventory from the variables, and then we can get a copy. And we want to get a copy from the replace weapon index that comes from the event. So simply hook it up over here. And we can do the same thing for the ammo arrays. So simply grab the ammo clip and the ammo stock array. And we want to get a value from there. So copy and paste the get nodes. And we simply want to get the value from the event again. So hook up the index that comes from the event input. And make sure you hook up the correct one. So this is the clip and this one is the stock. And that should be good to go. So right now, if we drop a weapon, or sorry, if we replace a weapon, it should spawn for other players to pick up. So let's make sure that we have everything saved and compiled, and I'm gonna give it a test. Okay, so before we actually test this, make sure you hook up the actual weapon inventory name to the name for the drop weapon. I missed it, so you probably did it already, but make sure this one is hooked up. And to make things a little bit easier, I lowered the weapon inventory size to be 3. So I can only carry 3 weapons instead of 5, so it's a bit easier to test right now. So compile and save, and let's have a quick look to see how this goes in game. I'll set up a match and I'll be right back. Okay, the game is launching. Now we need to dodge with the client. Oh, I need to change that. Well. Okay, so a player can pick up 3 weapons. So let's pick up a weapon first, and let's make sure that we fire a few rounds. So we also know that the ammo part is working. So I'm simply going to empty a full clip. So we have the stock at 315, and then I'm going to put the clip at 15 as well. So that's easy to remember. Now I can pick up another weapon. That's my 3rd weapon, so nothing will change. Now if I try to pick up another weapon, it will prompt me to replace one. So I'm gonna drop my SMG. And it actually spawns, so that's good to go. And now the server should be able to pick it up. So if I pick this one up, I get the Evo, and if I check the ammo counts, then I actually have 315 in 15. So that part seems to be working. And it should pretty much work for the host as well. So if I pick up a 3rd weapon over here, for example, and then go to my pistol. Now let's empty a few rounds. Well, that probably doesn't work because the client also has a pistol. So it will simply replenish the ammo for the client, but oh well. So if I try to pick up the auto pistol, I can replace my normal pistol. It will drop it on the ground, and I will have the auto pistol in my inventory. So that part seems to be working. If the client tries to pick it up, he has full ammo. So that makes sense. And now I can actually pick it up, and it replenishes my ammo. So that part is working, and I can replace it with a sniper as well, for example. There we go. So all of that stuff seems to be working and replicating, and all of the ammo counts are also working, so that's pretty nice. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like, and I'll be back soon for more. Talk to you later, guys. Bye bye.